What's going on, everybody? You're tuning into another episode of 2010 Minutes. I am your host, Tim McCarthy. Today we have on writer, director, comedian, author, producer, and podcaster. He has written everything from soap operas to parenting books to comics to horror films. Mr. Chris Mancini, how the hell are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Thanks for coming on. I know we had a couple. We had to change dates a little bit. You got a little sick. How you feeling?
Oh, a lot better now. Yeah, I got over the COVID, and then I got a sinus infection, and now I'm like, all right, I'm done. Now, can I don't want anything else for a little while.
Yeah, you got to be back on track now. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
feeling better, man.
hmm
All right, let's start with this. What does mental health mean to you?
Mental health means to me, I feel like there's the bad side, which is what's actually happening, depression and anxiety or anything else that you're going through. And then the positive side is the treatments, getting through it, and the support that you get to help you on your journey. So I feel like it's a diagnosis and treatment. When I hear mental health, I hear both.
Yeah, it's I love this question because everyone has a different answer and every answer is pretty much right. And like everyone can have mental health and some people can have mental health issues, but everyone gets depressed, you know what I mean? Like you obviously been depressed, everyone's been depressed,
Sure.
it's everything. So I like that answer a lot, sir. So you produce 3 podcasts. Make sure I got these
hmm
right. We have What
hmm
Are You Watching? The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood and Conversations from the Abyss. Can you briefly
Yes.
explain the first two and then I want to dive into Conversations from the Abyss?
Absolutely. What Are You Watching is kind of like the spiritual successor to Comedy Film Nerds, which I did for a decade, and that ended in like 2019. Where for What Are You Watching, I kind of branched it out from films to TV and interviewed comedians and other entertainment pros and find out kind of what they're watching. Because I feel like the insight of creators is really interesting to see like what they're watching. Like comedians often watch crime dramas, and drama writers that gravitate towards watching comedy specials, and basically the things that they're kind of creating are not necessarily the things that they're watching, and they have different insights as they're watching them. And they can also be a little extra critical because you're in the business, which is
Right.
also fun and interesting too. So that's that show. And then The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood is a new one that I started. It's a kind of a hybrid storytelling, anti-anxiety, sleep aid, adventure, travel, science podcast. So it's about a Professor Atwood who goes on all these different journeys throughout the world, and sometimes through wormholes and through time and all of these different places that he goes. And it's like a throwback to like the 80s adventure stories that I grew up with, and like Goonies and all these things of all my influences, and Indiana Jones and things like that. But it's told in a real quiet, slow, kind of almost like an ethereal way to help you kind of tone down your anxiety, to help you kind of drift off to sleep. It has original music and sound effects in every episode, so you actually can go onto this journey with the professor. And one of the reasons I created it is because when you have mental health podcasts, it's a lot of like, all right, well, you need to get an insider, you have to follow these tools. And with therapy, it's always like tips and tools and things that you can use, which is great. But I was thinking, well, what if I created a podcast where you don't have to do any work? The podcast does all the work for you. All you got to do is turn it on, and it'll help just relax. You don't have to engage with it. It doesn't care how you're breathing, it doesn't care if you're meditating or not. It will help you drift off, get out of your own head and drift off to sleep, or at least stop your thoughts from focusing on whatever is upsetting you or making you anxious or depressed, and kind of like slowly just kind of change the way that your thoughts are kind of obsessing, and then go on the journey with the professor. So I wanted to try to make it for not only a sleep aid, but at worst a 30 to 40 minute vacation for your brain.
Right. And how long that been going on?
That we started in 2020, late 2020. So that one's slowly starting to grow as it's getting a little more people listening, and some great comments. And people have been saying it's been really helping them, which is, as a creator, it's like you want people to enjoy what you do, but if it helps them as well, then that's like, the holy grail of what an artist can do. So I've been very happy with the response, and I'm glad that it's been helping people. So now I just have to add like a couple more zeros to the listenership, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, that's super easy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It comes. To back up on the Goonies, who's your favorite Goonie?
um, oh man, it's
Throw you right on the spot.
Yeah, I was like, I'm thinking because it's been so long since I've seen them. Like, I don't know if I can remember the names. It's one of the Coreys. So
Oh yeah, yeah. And so you just say Corey and you're good.
yeah, yeah, you're covered. Any '80s movie, just a Corey.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was such the hip name in the '80s. There's
yeah,
so many kids in the '90s just named Corey.
yeah.
Now, Steve, let's do a dive into the conversations from the abyss. Can you explain that as well?
Absolutely. That's a scripted podcast I started doing a couple of years ago where it's a conversation between two living things, possibly. It's like a Twilight Zone episode, but it's short conversations between possibly a woman who wants trying to sell her soul to the devil and the devil doesn't want it. People like in this weird house where when they go down into the basement, it's the past, but if they go towards the attic, it's kind of like the future. Like all weird, twisted stories. Then a guy ends up in a waiting room and he doesn't realize where he is or why he's there. So little creepy, weird stories. I called all my comedian friends to, and I said, "Hey, look, can you want to do like a weird, creepy story? Because it's not funny at all. It's I played it super straight and super weird."
Right.
And they're like, "Sure, absolutely." In fact, I did one with David Huntsberger and Aisha Tyler about an app developer who creates an app with unusually strong capabilities
Mhm.
and but what I wanted to do with that show is the thing about I always love about podcasting is it you feel like you're listening to a conversation between two people, like you're in the room, you're hanging out with these people, and that's the best thing about podcasting. And I thought, what if it was a conversation that you weren't meant to hear, like something really weird and off-putting and creepy? So I when I made Conversations from the Abyss, I kind of embraced the podcasting part of it, where this is a conversation that you're overhearing. So there's no real radio play stuff in it. Like there's a little bit of sound effects, but I made sure there's no music, there's no mood stuff. It's all feels like it's a real conversation that you've stumbled upon accidentally. And the interesting thing about anxiety, I've talked to another podcast that are like, well, how does this help you with anxiety? And I realized that with anxiety, writing Conversations from the Abyss and Created is like a catharsis because you get all these, angry and just, these these weird thoughts like out. Whereas Quiet Journeys is the calming part of it. So I feel like it's like two sides of anxiety. It's like, the angry loud part and then the quiet, like cool down part. And I think the both those podcasts are kind of like two different sides of that coin.
I think probably keeping yourself busy definitely helps you with your mental health because you
For
can't think
sure.
about anything else. Now, it's
Yeah.
not easy juggling all these things. How do you even find the time? Like, how do you make time for yourself and your brain? Like, what does a down day like for you? I feel like down day for you is like, yeah, I'll start another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually something, to be perfectly honest, I struggle with because, like, if I, have a down day, I start to feel guilty, and I gotta let stuff like that I have to start letting go. Like, "Oh, well, I'm not being productive, I'm not doing enough," or like, "Alright, well, I didn't get enough done," and then that creates, surprise, more anxieties.
Right.
So, but what I've been trying to do is manage that a little better and take this extra time. Like, all right, well, no, I'm going to take half a day on Fridays, and I'm not going to do anything, or I'm going to spend more time with the kids during the summer because they're off, or whatever I need to do. But it's definitely still a struggle because especially working freelance, and you've got all these different things. Sometimes things make money, sometimes they don't. You always got to kind of hustle, but as you get older, you want to find more of a balance. And honestly, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it.
How was it with anxiety juggling all that? Like, I feel like for me, if I was doing that, I have one podcast and I'm always just like overdoing it. I feel like, and I'm just like, is anyone really liking this? Like, how does it feel for you?
It's a lot, and it's also something that and this actually has less to do with anxiety, and also with being in entertainment, where you always have like a bunch of different projects going and stuff in the fire, and that's always a trap that I've fallen into over the years, where I've got too many things going on at once, and I'm stretched too thin, and because a lot of times when I work with partners, or you could kind of manage the work a little bit, but this is the first time that this company is just me. I don't have any partners, so I'm even more keenly aware of when I have to kind of manage and maybe pull back, and maybe slow things down a little bit. So it's definitely trying to find that sweet spot. Sometimes I find it, I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I want to be, and other times I'm like, I didn't get these 3 things done, and these other 2 things are now behind. So it's the same kind of thing. It's a mix, and it's I don't think any artist has gotten it completely right. I'd be surprised if you had a guess like, nope, I've managed it perfectly. So
Yeah. Everything's fine. I got it
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
together, and
I don't
yeah,
even know why you're asking. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. You never hear that at all.
yeah.
um, so you start White Cat Entertainment, which you started in 2020, which is the hub
Yes.
for all your work. You named it
Hmm.
after your cat. I'm a big cat guy. How did that cat impact your life?
The cat's name was Avatar, and she was a white cat. And by the way, named her way before the movie. I mean,
Sure, sure.
yeah, because she lived. She almost went to 21, which is a very long time for a cat to
Yeah.
live. And she was a stray, and she just showed up at our house one day, and we'd never had a cat before. And my wife came back in, and she's like, "A possum just chased me up the stairs." I said, "But that doesn't make sense at all," because she was going out to do the laundry. And first of all, if it was a possum, I doubt it would chase you. So I opened up the door, and there was this tiny little white cat meowing. And I said, "That's not a possum." And she's like, "Yeah, well, I got scared." I'm like, "All right, I understand." So um, wouldn't leave. And I'm like, "Well, what do we do?" I'm like, "All right, well, what's the one thing you do to make sure a cat never leaves? You feed it." So we had some tuna. We gave it some tuna. Came in like she owned the place, about 4 months old, covering like fleas and motor oil, like a
Mm.
super, lost stray. Took her to the vet and fell in love with her. And she was our companion for, like I said, up to 21 years. But the thing that was always about her is she was kind of like my writing partner. Like I would go in and write in my office, and she would come in, sit on the cat chair, and just spend down her little cat house and spend the day with me as I was writing. So whenever I would go, she would kind of follow me. But that's where she would kind of said, "I'm like, all right, well, it's work time. I'm going to come in the room and just spend the day with you." And I thought, like, well, when I'm starting this new company, how can I kind of like you know create a company that kind of says something about like what I want to do with storytelling, and also kind of like honor like my old feline writing partner that I feel like was kind of part of the inspiration for everything, because she was such a like almost like a mystical cat that just kind of showed up and became our companion, was with us for a large part of our lives. I mean, 21 years is a large part of your life. So I thought that was the perfect name to kind of name the company after.
Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I love the logo of it because it has that
Hmm.
vibe of like the old school Flintstones, Jetsons, like
Yep.
type of artwork. I like
Hmm.
that a lot. You
Hmm.
have the most conversations with animals, I feel like. That's like is your writing partner. It's like you can be like, "Is this
Yeah.
good? Is this bad?" And the
Yeah.
cat's just
Yeah.
looking at you like,
Hmm.
yeah, losing a pet isn't a great feeling at all. So I know that pain. Sorry for your loss. I'm not even joking. Like losing an animal is one of the hardest things to deal with, and like everyone has depression when that happens. There's no way around it.
Yeah. The longer you have the animal too, the harder it is for sure.
21 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love it. She just shows up. She's like, "Yep,
Yeah.
this is my
Yeah.
life now." Now you deal with your own mental health struggles, like you said. What are some difficulties have you dealt with, and how do you overcome them?
It was one of the things that I really had a tough time with is like I was on some medication and it wasn't working, and I had some reactions to it. So I had to kind of get through the reactions and then figure out ways to manage anxiety without medication. And one of the things that you kind of have to do is basically a trial and error approach, because everybody's mental health is different. Everybody's body is different. Even as you age, like I found one drug that worked like 15 years ago, then all of a sudden I was having a bad reaction to like a year or two ago, because as our bodies change, our reactions can to medication can change too. So that was a tough time because I wasn't sure what was working. I tried everything from journaling, which I hate doing. As a writer, it's weird, but I actually hate journaling because I'm like, I'm busy writing all these other things. I don't need to
Yeah,
journal
right.
too. So I'm done. Um, and it that time trying to figure out what worked and what didn't was very difficult and frustrating, because when you're in that heightened state of anxiety or even depression, you think, well, gosh, the I can't take the medicine, none of this is working. How am I going to manage this in my life? And your brain lies to you and says, well, you can't. This is your life now. It's always going to be miserable and tough, and you're always going to be depressed or anxious. And as the brain, it lies. And so when I went through this process and tried a bunch of different things, I didn't give up. And turns out some of the classics work, like exercising. Like, if I would wake up elevated at 4 or 5 in the morning, jump on the treadmill, it burned it in like 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. Or chiropractic care helped a lot, as it would release a lot of the tension on the nervous system, going
Love a
from
good
like,
crack. Love a good crack.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Like from like sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous systems. They could actually switch me over in the office. So sometimes I would go in super elevated, maybe shaking, and then come out not. So it was really interesting how chiropractic care can be a tool for mental health too. Exercise, eating better, losing some weight, like basically overall health improvements definitely help, but meditation and a couple of other things help. But there were a lot of things that didn't. Like I said, journaling and meditation helped a little bit, but not as much as I wanted it to. So everyone's different. But I will say this: if anyone is discouraged, like I went through it. Don't give up. There is a tool that will work for you. It just may be harder to find.
Right. If what was the first time that you were like, I have anxiety, or is there one that you really stood out to you? Like, I'm having some bad anxiety today.
Yeah, yeah, and it was when you never have mental health issues before and you start to have them. First of all, you don't know what they are. Like why is my right hand shaking, or why am I getting tremors, or why am I obsessing over the same thought that's repeating in my mind for 2 to 3 days, and
Right.
you don't know what it is, so you just think, oh, I'm tired, or or whatever, and but then when it doesn't go away, you realize that there's something else going on, and then the next thing is to diagnose it, and then of course to treat it. But one of the things that got me the most is I was scared to have kids. And that was one thing that just if I had low level anxiety before, it wasn't low level then. As I had an impending, my first child was about to be born. In fact, I was so nervous about it, I wrote a book about it. So,
What's the name of the book?
it's Pacify Me, a handbook for the freaked out new dad. And that is actually out. Then Simon and Schuster published it actually. So I definitely struck a nerve and a chord with other dads, but it was actually terrifying. And the book kind of goes through my journey of like being anxious and scared, and then going through the whole process and realizing what was I afraid of, and I actually love being a father, and that whole kind of journey. But that first part was super real. Like you really feel like your life is over and you're shaking and you just don't know what's going to happen. I always say, see, guys, we like an escape plan. Like if things don't work out, we need to be able to run away. But when you have a kid, there's no escape plan. You're always going to have a kid. And I went through kind of like these silly kind of fears and all the things that guys kind of went through that guys can relate to. In fact, a couple of readers that said, "Yeah, I kind of gave this to my wife because she didn't understand what I was going through, and it actually kind of helped her understand." Because the women, when they're pregnant and when a baby, they just look at us and go, "Would you just shut up? You
Yeah.
just, so this kind of like outlines, what sometimes we're going through as new dads.
Being a dad, I can only imagine. It's like, here's a baby. Make sure it doesn't die. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay. And it
yeah.
is tough too, because I
Mhm.
definitely
For the
done
next
interviews.
50 years. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet for a guy too must be tough, because like most guys can't really take care of themselves. They're like, yeah, I'm
right,
making it
yeah,
fine. They're like, oh, now I have to
yeah,
take care of
yeah.
another human.
Yeah, are they old enough so I can show them Star Wars movies yet?
Yeah.
No, that's gonna be a while. You still have
Yeah.
to change some diapers before then.
Still put it on. They'll get used to the music
Yeah,
right away
yeah.
and they'll click.
It'll help
And
them
it's tough
sleep.
for both sides too, because the possible postpartum depression for women, and then men are going through it too. So it's like you
Yes.
got to find that happy medium with both sides, and
Yep.
that's going to be super difficult.
Yeah, and it's also a matter of too of like seeing where your spouse needs support, and if you're going through something similar, or if you both need support, it's that kind of recognition that you both kind of need to see what you need, or if you could support each other, or how, all those things. So I think the open dialogue is key and critical.
Do you have an example that you would say? What's the word I'm looking for? Like what? How would you describe anxiety? Like what would you compare it to?
Okay, I've thought about this a lot, and I feel like it's like you're walking around inside a giant beehive, and then halfway through you realize that the beehive is actually inside you.
I like that. I love a good analogy. That was the
Yeah.
word I was looking for, is
Yeah.
analogy. And that was a good one. I've heard a bunch of different ones. I've heard
Yeah.
a flat tire. It'll still go around and round, but you have to like make sure that you take care of it. I think that was more on the
Hmm.
depression side, but still,
Right.
I like good analogies like that.
Hmm.
Now, what are some projects you've worked in the film industry? I'm very intrigued by that.
One of the things we did a couple years ago was Earbuds, the podcasting documentary. So we went all over the world. Essentially, we went through around the country and then went to Australia and Japan to meet the podcast fans and interview other podcasters to find out what was it about podcasting that made such a personal connection between the host and the listener. And the answers were incredible. Everything from like, feel like you're talking to a friend to helping me through anxiety and depression and all of these things. So, Mark Maron, Aisha Tyler, Doug Benson. It's like a lot of comedians in it. The Freakonomics guys are in it. Stuff you should know. Like we interview the Welcome to Night Vale. We interview a ton of our podcasting colleagues, and it's a fun documentary. And it's ultimately about too how we were kind of connecting with our fans, and just the experience of going to Australia and Japan to shoot a documentary was, especially on a shoestring, like a Kickstarter shoestring, was fantastic. So I wouldn't, that's a memory I will always cherish. So that's one film. And the other film was like a ridiculous story. It was a horror movie, and it was bought and then like ruined in it's in Bulgaria. Like they threw the script away and it made it an absolute mess. And then they brought it back to me to fix. So it was so bad that I had to make it like a horror comedy and show like how a horror company kind of ruined it. So I made it like an Office kind of thing with the footage that they shot in Bulgaria, and then they forgot to rebranded. It was called Asylum. It's actually out from Lionsgate, and
Oh, no way.
but and it's one of those movies I thought, well, they're going to bury it. Like, nope, keeps showing up literally everywhere. So it was supposed to be rebranded as Death of a Horror Movie because it ended up being a horror comedy, but they didn't. They kept the name Asylum. So now a horror fan that rents it and watches it is furious because they don't know what they're watching. But one of our fans watching it, like listen to the podcast and knew the story, finds it like hilarious because it's so ridiculous. So there's actually a movie out there that exists that has myself, Dean Haglund from the X-Files, Stephen Rea from The Crying Game, and a bunch of bald Bulgarian actors playing a SWAT team in an asylum. That it does exist. It shouldn't, but it exists. So you can check that out if you want to laugh. Now that you know what it is, you can enjoy it.
Fantastic. What are some of your favorite horror movies? I'm a big horror movie guy myself. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorites.
Love the Evil Dead franchise, and one of the things I love about it is I don't think I've ever seen this happen before, where you've got Evil Dead 1, which is a straight on horror movie, super creepy. I just watched it again, actually. You know what? It holds up, man.
Oh
I know
yeah,
it's still super creepy. Evil Dead 2 is great, but then Evil Dead 3 is basically an action movie that they slapped an R rating on just because it had the name Evil Dead.
yeah.
And the series is fantastic. And I like the type of horror movies where it's some imagination. I like a supernatural element to it, and I like kind of like the fighting against the darkness element to it, like Ash versus Evil Dead. Like I love things like that. Whereas slasher movies I don't really like because I feel like they're just kind of weird, cold, and like exploitative. But I like the supernatural fight of like I also really enjoy the stuff that's grounded, like Paranormal Activity. I really enjoyed. I thought that was really well done.
That first one was
Um,
like mind blowing. It's like the
yeah,
first Saw at first. You're like, this
exactly.
is
Yeah.
crazy.
Now, I will say Saw is like my exception of like a serial killer kind of thing because it's also kind of like a thriller mystery. I did like that first movie too, but it's I guess you could kind of say Alien. The first Alien was a horror movie, but sci-fi horror, which I really enjoyed. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of new interesting things out there too, like The Witch. That one was really interesting. And then the last horror movie that I really liked that I saw was Last Night in Soho, which I really liked.
Oh, I heard
Um,
about that.
yeah, it's super long,
Mm.
and it's a lot of drama and period stuff. But what I like is like these filmmakers are not afraid to kind of mix genres. Like, yeah, it's horror, but it's also period. It's thriller, it's romance, it's coming of age, to kind of throw all these things kind of together and see what comes out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I thought Last Night in Soho, it worked.
Supernatural movies, I'm with you on that because with at least
Mhm.
with slashers, you can throw hands with them. You pretty much gonna lose 9 times out of 10. But the
Yeah.
supernatural, you gotta like you don't fight anything. Like you just
Right.
like I gotta get out of this situation. It's so
Yeah.
hard, and that's why Evil Dead's great because it is like that. But then they start throwing people that are possessed, and you're like, I gotta
Right.
kill my best friend.
Yeah. Mhm.
Out of all the titles you have, writer, director, comedian, author, producer, and podcaster, what is I wouldn't say the easiest, but what is the hardest one out of all of those to keep up with?
I think directing would be the hardest one because it requires so many moving parts, a certain level of funding, and a certain level of organization and partnership. So, and then when you're actually on set to putting it all together, it's a very brief amount of time. That's a lot of like intense kind of figuring out. Well, do we have the money for this? Can we put this together? And like even when I was like reshooting the asylum shots, it was all kind of in an office. But even then, there was like budget constraints and well, like, to get my buddy Dean Haglund from the X Files to come over, I had to give up my rental car, for to
Mm.
get to the. I'm like, well, really? You're gonna make me give up my rental car just to have an actual actor in this part that I wanted to? So, but there's weird things like that you have to deal with. Whereas, with writing, I could kind of do whatever I want. It's a blank page. If I want to, have Professor Atwood go through time or into space, that's I can do it. Um, Comic books, they're a little bit more, but they're not at the level of a film or something like that. Where so I think the hardest thing of everything I do is probably directing, and it's probably the thing I do the least, just because of all those things have to come together for it to actually happen. Um, Whereas the thing I enjoy the most and the thing I can do the most is probably the writing.
Who and what is your inspiration behind all your titles?
That's a good question. I think one of the things is when I was growing up, I had my nose in a book the entire time. I think from when I was old enough to read, and I would absorb everything genre, everything science fiction and fantasy, and but I would always also love to laugh. So I would always mix of like comedy, science fiction, fantasy, and as I got older, I just kind of started mixing all of those kind of things together. But I read everything from like Robert E. Howard, the Conan stories, to like Ray Bradbury, and I think, and then watching Monty Python and SCTV. I think all of those things just kind of mixed together in my brain, and then so. And ultimately, they culminated now in White Cat Entertainment, which is a storytelling company that focuses on like comedy and genre storytelling. So it's Long Gone Far Away is a comedic fantasy graphic novel, and all of these things. Like I still have a bunch of horror projects. I have some horror comedies. I've got all of these different things going. But ultimately, I think it was a mix of books, TVs, and movies, but all very specific to fantasy, science fiction, and of course adventure, and all of those just kind of you know larger than life stories. Like I never really gravitated towards like the small indie dramas until I got like older, which I enjoyed them, but I don't create them. So I think that's more of what my influence was.
I was going to do this question. I was going to have you do a Mary Fuck Kill with your own podcast, but I'm going to do this one
Mhm.
instead. I'm going to do what would you
Mhm.
rather? Would you rather have somebody laugh from something that you said or did, have someone scared, or move somebody emotionally?
Boy, if I could do all three, I would put that in a bottle and
the the
I think
Triforce from
yeah,
Zelda.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think laugh would be the first thing, because if I'm making someone laugh, it hit them in a relatable way and also elevated their joy in their life for like even for just a brief moment.
Who's some of your favorite directors?
So my favorite directors are let's see, growing up of course was Spielberg, Lucas, and but I was also a sometimes I would start to look at some of like the weirder stuff like Terry Gilliam, like when he would start making like Adventures of Baron Munchausen and all of these kind of weird twisted. He started obviously with the Monty Python movies, but then like things like Brazil, and it got weirder and weirder. So I think those are probably my three biggest inspirations.
Random question. Have you seen the movie Forbidden Zone?
Yes, with the yeah, and it's insane with Hervé Villechaize.
Yeah,
I
Danny Elfman movie.
Danny Elfman movie. Yeah, and Danny Elfman is in it as the devil.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
movie ruined my head. That movie and Meet the Feebles have like those two
yeah,
movies have just
mhm,
ruined me as a human being.
yeah,
They live rent free in my head. And I know you're a movie guy, so I had to ask you if
yeah.
you've seen Forbidden Zone.
Absolutely. Well, Meet the Feebles is another great one too. Like, I don't know anyone who was watching Meet the Feebles and going, you know what, this guy would be great for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, dude. How did that's gonna be the craziest transition in movie
Yeah.
history, that guy.
Yeah, so that's yeah, that's insane. And that's one of the movies that you see to Meet the Feebles in like at a film festival. Like I saw it at a film festival at midnight with a bunch of like other fans. And everyone's like, it's like watching Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's like that kind of like, woo! You're in like the secret club that actually knows this movie exists, and then you're horrified by it all over again.
Yeah. How would you explain both of those movies to people that haven't seen it? Just fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think I could.
No,
Yeah.
you can't. You absolutely can't. You just have to see it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's end with this a little bit. I'm gonna wrap up. What are some motivational things? I know you said like what you can do, like meditation and all that stuff. What are some things that you would give to somebody that deals with anxiety, mental health illnesses? Like, what would you say to them if you had a chance?
One of the things is there's definitely a mind body connection. Like the whole thing of concentrating just on your mind or your body is only, tackling half the problem. Like I would say, like for anxiety too, exercise has helped me tremendously. I wasn't completely sedentary before, but specifically like doing more exercise and exercising when I'm elevated with an anxiety attack, when the last thing I want to do is exercise. It's like, no, can't I just sit here and feel awful? And then you have to tell yourself, no, you're going to feel better if you get on the treadmill, if you go for that walk, or if you move your body around. And then that's kind of like that fight again, when your brain says, no, we want to stay miserable and awful and feel this way. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. No, I would say exercise and also other things to like get out of your head. Like I talk about my podcast, I actually do use it as well. Like I listen, in fact, sometimes when I'm editing it and listening to the tracks that the composer and the sound designer is putting down, sometimes I'll fall asleep in the middle of the edit, because if he hits like the right sweet spot, I'm like, well, now I got to rewind and listen to it again. But things that get you out of your head, like any kind of like things that give you joy or distraction, and also physical movement, are the two things that have worked the best for me.
All right, let's have some fun here a little bit. If your movie if your movie I mean if your life was a movie, what actor would play you and who would you want directing it?
Oh wow, I think Terry Gilliam directing it. So I could have these weird fantasy sequences about what's going on in my
Yep.
head. And I think maybe a young Steve Buscemi.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. That he was a stud back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, but he was just weird enough where you were like, yeah, he's got that cool kind of a vibe about him. Where so I think that would be a good combination.
That's great. Now, what would be the theme song of that movie? Think about what your personal theme song would be. What would be playing at the opening credits?
I really like that song, "Clocks" by Coldplay, and some of the lyrics there, just as someone with anxiety, just really kind of click. Like confusion that never stops, closing walls and ticking clocks. You cursed miss opportunities. Like you wonder, am I the cure? Am I the disease? Like the way your brain just gets all jumbled and confused when you have anxiety. And I felt like sometimes when I have anxiety, like I'll actually play that song and it'll just kind of take things down a notch too, because I feel like it's such a relatable thing.
Music is so powerful for the soul. I know it sounds corny, but it
No,
really
it's
is.
true, 100%. Like Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood without the music would not be nearly as effective as it
Right.
is, for sure.
Now, let's end with this. What are three things that you're grateful for today, sir?
Three things I'm grateful for. One would definitely be my family. I have two kids and a wonderful wife who have been there for me every step of the way, super, super supportive. And I've been really grateful that I've been able to touch other people's lives, everything from doing stand up to writing, to be able to do something that I love and have it touch people, and and make their lives a little bit better in a small way for a short amount of time. I mean, that's as much as I want to entertain people, if I could help people and make them feel better too then it's, I really feel like, even like with the book, with pacify memes, like, yeah, I can make new dads laugh, great, because it's a comedy book, but also if I could reassure them and help their anxiety too, could I do that at the same time? And then that's the kind of thing I'm also very grateful for. And the other thing I'm grateful for is that I've I've made it this far. So I feel like now, every year that we get through without the world ending or blowing up, I think is like, okay, I'm thankful and grateful.
Seriously. I know you've had such a great career already. Like I wish you nothing but the best moving forward, my friend.
Thank you.
Now, where can everybody find you on the internets?
It's pretty, I put everything at whitecatentertainment.com, so it's pretty simple. We are going through a website refresh, so if it's down for a couple minutes, just check again tomorrow. It'll be there. But
Yeah.
you could get all the projects, the graphic novels. You could click through to the podcast. They're on every player, and the movies and everything else you could kind of find through there, even the Twitter feeds. And like, I'm at Chris J. Mancini and White Cat Stories, but you could find those on White Cat Entertainment too.
Fantastic. Everyone go to whitecatentertainment.com. Chris Mancini, thank you for taking the time to chat with me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
This has been awesome. Thanks, Tim.
Round 1. Fight!
All right. Well, you know the deal. I'm going to play rock, paper, scissors with you. 2 out of 3. You ready for this, sir?
I am.
Fantastic.
Yes, ready.
Perfect. So you're going to call it. I'll keep my eyes closed. You're going to do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. You got
Okay.
that? Because some people have their own little different ways. I had Butch Patrick on, and he was like rock, paper, shoot. I was like, hold up. Hold up, sir. I don't know what 1950s jargon you're doing right now, but I'm not liking it. Yeah, so whenever you're ready to call it, and we got 2 out of 3.
All right. Rock, paper, scissors, go.
What do you
All
got?
right. I got scissors, so you win.
Okay, one more.
All right. Rock, paper, scissors, go. I got paper. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Rock, paper, scissors, go. Got paper again. Look at that tie.
All right, I like this. This is contentious.
Yeah. Rock, paper, scissors, go. Paper again.
Oh, I like it. I like
All right.
it.
Rock, paper, scissors, go. Rock.
Ooh, I thought you were gonna go paper again. That was a
I
good
was
matchup.
super close. Yeah.
It's such a game of wits here, and I always I don't do. I'm definitely batting under 500. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. If you are feeling suicidal, please dial 911.